Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Mark Moyer, author of Win Again, speaker, career coach, and business advisor. And I help athletes, executives, and entrepreneurs reach their fullest potential. What you're going to be hearing in every single episode are conversations with athletes and other sports-related influencers. And we'll be offering you the insight that you need to succeed in life, including advice that will let you jump past your competition, whether it be for a great new job or taking your business to a much, much higher level. Make sure to connect with me on social media at Mark Moyer Coach and go to my website, markmoyer.com, to get access to the tips and strategies that my coaching clients get directly. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email to mark@markmoyer.com and I'll get you going right away. Thanks for joining me today. It's going to be an awesome episode. Now, are you ready to make your mark? Let's do this. Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. My name is Mark Moyer, and I'm broadcasting to you live from New York City. Super thrilled to have you on board wherever you're listening. If it's here in New York, somewhere else in the United States, or anywhere else on the planet, thanks for being here. And I'm super excited. I just finished recording an episode with Brandon Steiner. And Brandon is really the pioneer within the sports memorabilia and sports marketing space. I mean, this guy has really brought that whole industry forward. Brilliant guy, super episode. You'll get so much great stuff out of this one. But before you listen, please subscribe to the podcast, whether it's on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening to, please click on the subscribe button. Also go to my website anytime, markmoyer.com, for access to all the previous episodes, but also great content and how to take your career or your business to the next step. Check it all out. Without further ado, here is Brandon Steiner. You're going to love this episode. You'll get so much out of this. You'll learn so much from him and from me. And happy listening. Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. My name is Mark Moyer, and I'm super excited to have Brandon Steiner on board today. And Brandon doesn't know this, but he's had an adverse impact. I'm just kidding. A big impact on my life going back many years. I'm a big, huge, enormous collector of memorabilia, which borders on addiction, but that's okay. It's all good and fun. And so now is my opportunity to finally say hi and thank you. And Brandon, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. Great to be here, and love the background. And obviously, you've done a lot of good work in sports with your work with athletes, and obviously, same here. I'm trying to keep these athletes, keep their pockets full and keep their lives vibrant. And sounds like you're doing the same. So good stuff. Good to meet you.
I appreciate it, Brandon. It's funny because a lot of times people don't necessarily understand what goes on behind the scenes of any athlete, right? I think a lot of the assumption is that they spend whether it's whatever the sport is, they spend those few hours on the court, on the field, on the rink, wherever. And then the rest of the time they're just out drinking champagne and having the time of their lives. And it's a lot different. And I've met tons of athletes as a result of some of the work that you've done and others. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but I want to talk about, and we're going to run through a few things here, but really I want to talk about how it all started, because I love your story. I've read your books, and I think that a lot of people out there don't necessarily know, Brandon, that, they see the glamour, they see all the people you're next to, here you are next to Michael Jordan and Mariano and Derek Jeter and all these guys. But people don't really know a lot about your past. And I'd love to hear a little bit about, and if you could tell everybody about your childhood growing up in Brooklyn, what that was like, and, what ended up bringing you to Syracuse and so forth.
I mean, it's been a great journey, and it is glamorous. It is some good hype about hanging out with some of these people, particularly, you learn so much from them. I mean, you have to get done with the celebrity aspect of it. Anytime you get an opportunity to be around someone who has achieved significance and extraordinary results, if you can get past the whole hype of all that, I mean, there's stuff you can learn and share, and it really has been a blessing. So it is very cool. And I mean that from, if you're hanging around, you notice the guy who's tipping up your garbage, and, nobody's ever picked up your garbage the way he has or she has, there's something to learn. I mean, so I love extraordinary people that do their job better than I've ever seen it on all levels. I've always been kind of curious that way, and appreciative that way. I always had in my mind, never about, I never really, growing up, I grew up in Brooklyn, kind of poor and not having a lot, but I was never interested in being successful. I mean, and that's so crazy because in a lot of ways, financially, I had such really small goals, but I wanted to be significant. I wanted to be the best that ever was, whatever I decided to do. for a while, I thought I was going to be an athlete. And then all of a sudden, I realized that, my best day was somewhat mediocre on most ball fields, but I like playing and I enjoy the game. But so I'm not like a frustrated athlete that tore his arm up or hurt his knee, which you talk to a lot of sports guys that, almost made it. They're in the minor leagues. Like, the best fields I saw was a schoolyard, and was a rec league in college.
Yeah.
And, I was just an outright, hard player, liked to play, and I was too short and definitely was not gifted. And that's, so, I think the reason I mention that is that I think you got to recognize, and it's hard, but the real way to grow is through self-analysis. And I could tell everybody in this conversation all the things you should do to be better, to grow. But, most people know what to do, and the best person to tell you what to do is yourself. And I was always I always did a lot of good self-analysis as far as pushing myself and realizing, when I look in the mirror, liking what I saw, but also wanting to improve what I saw. And I think that a lot of people don't realize how much of a benefit that could be, just being honest with yourself. And I think as a kid, I was very driven, grew up in a poor, relatively poor home. We were on welfare quite a bunch of years and lived in a really small apartment over a butcher shop. And I've been working since I'm 10. So I always say, if you love something, if you can go I tell kids all the time, don't wait till you finish college to get going. Like, I think sometimes parents are a little too soft on their kids, and there's so much time to do so much. The main thing is really get behind your kid and get into it so they understand what it takes to be great. I don't worry that much that my kid for a while wanted to play hockey and then all of a sudden he quit. He saw what was required and he wasn't willing to go in. I don't mind that we played Little League baseball. My kid loved baseball, and all of a sudden one day when he was went to high school, he said, I don't want to put this kind of time into that. I have other things. So, sometimes like pushing your kid and then having them not decide they don't want to do that. The lesson is it's always about trying to figure out what's required. And then sometimes you're quitting. Sometimes quitting can be really beneficial. It was for me. I tried a lot of things. I worked in a hospital in high school. Went to work in a hospital one day a week with a friend of mine just to, see if maybe we're going to be doctors or so forth. But, that wasn't going to work out for me. So, my childhood was a very creative one. My mother's favorite line was, "You got to have balls." Most people know me from that last book that I wrote. I have 3 books. You got to have balls, about being fearless, about having, determination, and definitely not willing to settle for just doing something well, but doing something extraordinary is the goal, and doing something different and more unique than what anyone else has done. And that's what I try to explain to people, like, what are you going to do to differentiate yourself, especially if you're doing something that someone else is doing? And what are you doing to get better? What are you doing to really figure out what the road is that you want to take? And are you want to climb those rough hills and get through those tough climbs? Because that's how you can become a significant, extraordinary. And for me, 30 years, this is our 30th anniversary. So, I'm very grateful that customers have enjoyed what we're doing here at Steiner. And if you're out there, it's one day, every day. We try to just get a little better. I try to make a couple of friends and try to learn something.
That's great. Now, so what you went to Syracuse University, you decided that you were thinking to yourself, where can I go and completely freeze my butt off for 4 years? And you chose Syracuse, which was, a good choice for that. I understand that being in the Shenango Valley up at Colgate, it's, it was, I think the day that I visited Colgate was the one day, it was like 62 degrees. People were throwing Frisbees. It was May something. I'm like, well, this is great. And, not realizing that it was under.
I never let Syracuse get in the way of my education. And, I realized I struggled in school. I went to a Passville high school, and I got on my mother and said, I think my girlfriend's going to college, and I thought maybe I should do that. And she said to go speak to the guidance counselor, Mrs. Saunders. And Mrs. Saunders told me that she didn't think it was a good idea for me to go to college. I should maybe go to a trade school.
Oh.
And, I had 760 in my SATs, which is not a good score. It was an experimental Passville high school, so that was kind of got people's attention. It was a little different, very unique educational high school. And we had no money. So we went to, the most expensive school in New York State was Syracuse. Nobody that poor in my circumstance would have the balls to go to apply to a school like that, because my mother wanted me to get an accounting degree. She thought that was the degree that I needed to complete my business, integrate my business resume. Because I've been marketing and hustling and promoting on the streets of Brooklyn. I figured I got an education there. And it's funny, like I went up there and, sometimes I think we kind of close ourselves off. We kind of limit ourselves with the story we tell ourselves. But all it takes is one person to be sold a little differently. And you'd be surprised how the door can open up. I think it was a huge break for me, for Syracuse to take me to go to a private school like that, as poor as I was. First time I really got 3 square meals a day when I went to Syracuse. And really just being in a school with a lot of rich kids that didn't view me as the poor kid. And at home, listen, I love Brooklyn. I love all my friends, still in touch with them. But, I never looked at myself as being poor. I looked at my circumstances being poor, but I was always a vibrant, energized kid, always try to figure it out. But when you're in a wealthy neighborhood, that's not how your neighbors and friends look at you. You're the poor kid who doesn't have much. But I went up to school and nobody really knew much from anything. So I think that, if you want to change your situation, sometimes you got to take some bigger risks if you want a bigger result. And sometimes the little risks count for a lot too. And I think going up to Syracuse for a kid from Brooklyn with no money was a big risk at that point. And I made a big sale. I wasn't afraid to go after it, make a big sale. I think there are moments in time when you have a calling to do something. You got to go with confidence and vigor and go make it happen regardless. And I was convicted about going to college, and why not go to the best school that I could possibly go to?
Well, that's great. It's funny. You and I chatted a bit earlier, and we talk about being an entrepreneur and how lots of younger people today are launching companies because they say they've got a few bucks and they've got a phone and a computer and they're off and running. But and you started Steiner, as you said, 30 years ago, the company, but it's tough to run it. It's
you start a company, and it's tough to realize that when you start one, it takes several years. And your main goal is when you start a company should be to stay open.
Yeah.
Not worrying so much about the money. I think that's the mistake. But listen, I had a Mac Plus and a phone. So it's not that much different. I think today it's actually a little bit easier because you can grind out. You can really work all hours of the night. You can do a lot of things just from your house, never move, because there are so many avenues to connect with so many different people.
Right.
But for me, I think, I opened a company up at a time when a whole bunch of my friends did, and most of them it didn't work out. And the reason is I was just thinking, can I stay open for 5 years? Because you got to figure that the idea you have is going to need alteration, improvements. Right. You don't want to be you don't want to be an inventor. You want to be an improver. You want to take something, make it better if you can. Right. That's a great way to look at what you're doing in your business, and you want to solve a problem. And sometimes the problem you think you're solving doesn't measure up as far as when you expedite. Or maybe there's no money to be made, or there's no upside, but there's a lot of different ways to look at your business. The main thing is you want to put yourself in a position to be on a swivel and to be able to try a bunch of things without being pressed with the cash, without having to make money. And it's hard to turn to your wife when you're younger and say, look, I'm going to need 3 or 4 years. But in my mind, I was always, if I could stay open 4 or 5 years, let enough people know what I do, try some things, fail at some things, move on to some other things. I figured after 4 or 5 years, I was a smart enough guy to figure it out. It was a good game plan. It worked out for me because the first 3 or 4 years were tough. I didn't make a lot of money. I hung in there. I was grinding it out. I was trying a lot of different things. My wife definitely, was worried at some point because it wasn't really coming together.
Right.
And she sat down with me and said, maybe you should go get a job, and you were making more money when you were working in the marketplace. Maybe this is not for you. So, we had that moment of, oh my God, I can't believe this is not working. And sometimes you got to create that game within the game, that underdog mindset when you're starting. Most people look at it as freedom. I look at it as you have to go play that game within the game and really push yourself. And if you're not a self-starter and self-motivator, regardless of how good your idea is, it could be tough to win.
Well, so absolutely. And I've been through the same thing, and I completely agree. And it's sometimes the biggest challenge is not really convincing yourself that you can be successful. It's convincing the people that are closest to you that can work out. Now, so you started your company and you're thinking, you know what, there's something missing in the market today. There are all these athletes that really aren't being either well represented, especially in the collectibles marketplace and some others. But so you decided, all right, I'm going to start doing this thing, and you launched the company, and you had a few $1,000 to get it going, and you're off and running. Who was the first athlete that sort of signed with you and you said, wait, I'm onto something here?
Well, I mean, first of all, I started with $4,000, which is not a lot of money. And
right.
For everybody listening and watching, that's stupid. Don't do that, because it was undercapitalized. That put a lot of pressure on me. But I did have a wife that was doing well, so she was kind of supporting the back end. There was really not enough cash to work with. Number two, I think it's very, very important that, I mean, I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but entrepreneurism is you have to do three things to be a successful entrepreneur. So before you even think about getting started, realize, one, you have to understand the market you're getting into. So when I was getting into the sports marketing business, nobody was marketing athletes. So what's the market you're getting into? What's the problem you're trying to solve? So at the time, nobody was marketing athletes. I was just doing fan mail for the athletes. I was running some different sports bars, which was a new concept in itself that I had created, and really thinking about going the long way there, because nobody was doing sports bars. Yeah. I just come off the Hard Rock experience. So what problem are you solving? Do you really understand the marketplace you're about to go into? But so really what I'm asking is, do you really understand who your potential customer is going to be? Number two, do you have the ability to take risk? Because you're going to be doing something, obviously, that's solving a problem that no one else has done. And most people are going to look at you like you're crazy. So do you have the ability to take a risk, which means go do something that no one else is doing, that no one else really sees, and be able to put your balls on the line.
Right.
You have the kahunas to go and do that. And this is where a lot of entrepreneurs fail, is in the risk department. And then the third thing is leadership. In order to go get a bunch of people, whether it be customers, employees, different people that you need to surround yourself with, you got to be able to lead. You got to be able to convince people that what you're doing, the direction you're taking, is much better, much different. And even though you can't see it, you got to have faith and trust me. And that's leadership, which is really an underestimated characteristic these days in business. Leadership is so important in taking your team and taking a group of people to different places that usually they don't see, and convincing them and staying articulate and communicative, and convincing people that you're the person who's going to take them to the promised land. And so those three ingredients are critical, and those are three ingredients that I think that I had. I wasn't quite sure what to do with the sports thing, because there was so many different directions that I could take. But at the time, the direction that I felt like was given to me was, I had this relationship with so many athletes, and they were all really, I felt, needed help. There's nobody marketing them. Now everybody's got a marketing person. Everybody's got a brother, sister. But back in the late 80s, no one was doing it. Agents were calling me up and asking me to please take their players. Please help me with them. Anything you can come up with. And the real aha moment, to answer your question you asked me about 5 minutes ago, which was, I met a guy named Marty Blackman, who was a marketing guru, and he was one of the first guys to do a lot of sports marketing. He did the Coca-Cola commercial with me and Joe Green. He did the Miller Lite commercials. He was casting for that. And he said, Brandon, don't represent the players. It's too wishy-washy. There's too many players that are up, down, every which way. Go and, you're a promoter. Go and call company after company and explain to them how to use a player, how to grow your business with using celebrities. You have a million ideas. You've got to know these guys, get to know more guys, and represent companies and help them be their celebrity arm and show them how to use players. Now, if I would have stayed on that path, which I have, I mean, I'm 30 years doing that. It's a silent path, but we still do a lot of marketing of a lot of players. That probably would have been enough. I didn't see the business growing in the early 90s the way I was hoping, meaning that most players got $1,000, $2,500, $5,000 on, if you want to get, a big name. And I was doing a lot of appearances and just wasn't making enough money.
Right.
I decided that I was going to start the collectible division, which started around 94 when I signed Mark Messier and Phil Rizzuto exclusively. And that's how that got started. Most people say, how'd you get started? And you kind of asked me that, Mark. And I tell people, in this new book, Living on Purpose,
Yeah.
A must read, by the way, if you're really serious about not only settling for success, but you want significance. I talk about this in the book because I don't know, people want to have this this magic wand that comes down, that you come up with what you're doing for this magical reason. But I was sitting on the train on the Metro North in Westchester, going into the city working, and my mom had just passed. And I was very close with my mom, and it was a really tough week. And the Rangers, the New York Rangers, I'm a big hockey fan, had just won the cup. And I looked down and I see that on the back page of the Daily News is a picture of Mark Messier, who I didn't have a relationship with at the time. I had a relationship with a bunch of other Rangers, but not him. He was the captain, the big name, biggest name to come to New York. And there was really not much else going on in New York at that point other than the Rangers.
Right.
What's interesting is I could not stand being on that train. The guy on the phone, eating, the shoes off, crowded. Half the time the train was late. The other time, half the time I was late, missed the train. And all I really wanted to do, Mark, was I just want to get off the damn train. I was just trying. I knew I'd get a car, and I wasn't making enough money to buy a car. How could I go home and tell my wife I needed a car to drive into the city when I was barely making enough money to contribute? My wife was a CFO, doing really well, and she was happy to support me while I was following this dream, but I can't ask her to get a car. So I'm thinking, I got to go make enough money to buy a car. It's enough already. So I see this picture of Mark. I'm like, if I could sell 2,000 of those. We just won the Cup. It was like the biggest thing going on in New York, very similar to Chicago recently, winning the World Series, the Red Sox back in 2004. It was like that level.
Yeah.
I chased Mark down 3 months, his sister, brother, lawyer. We do our first collectible deal. And that's really how we started Steiner Collectibles. I chased him down. He signed a ton of stuff, ended up being an amazing partner. And I went and bought my car. And the reason I started Steiner Collectibles was to get off the goddamn train so I could buy a Lexus SC400. I didn't do it for the betterment of mankind, to bring people closer to the game, to get all that. A lot of those purposes came later,
yeah.
Honesty. But at that time, I'd be honest, it was a strict money grab. I saw an opportunity to make a shitload of money.
And you did it.
And I just went after it, and I made a lot of money. And then I got my first brand new car, and I was driving into the city.
I'm starting to feel like maybe I paid for the steering wheel in that car with, I bought a bunch of those Messier jerseys after you had those signed and so forth.
What a great partner he was, and still a good friend and partner to this day. And but what a blessing to be able to get him on our as a partner and as part of the company. That was a big aha moment for us.
Oh, absolutely. So you, in '94, you really crank up the collectibles, and then 2099 rolls around and Omnicom says, "Hey, Brandon, how about selling?" Well,
I've been doing well at that point. 98, I had to take a second mortgage on my house. Just some small little things like, my wife and I went to a bank. We didn't have enough money we were stretched out cash wise. Cash flow is so important.
Mm-hmm.
In 99, I really started turning it up and really figuring out how to make the business work. People don't realize, like, this whole collectible thing wasn't a business, wasn't an industry. I was trying to formulate some order to it all. And it took me a while to kind of, when you want to do something extraordinary, a lot of times you got to make a mess, and then a bigger mess, and then clean it up. And that's kind of what happened in 98, 99. I was on a lot of things, doing a lot of things, but I wasn't really sure what I was doing and how to make money. And what happened in 99, we started making some real money, but also everybody was consolidating. A lot of sports marketing companies were getting bought up by different agencies.
Mm-hmm.
I had about 3 or 4 companies at some point were chasing me down. And I wasn't a money grab. Omnicom is an unbelievable company, and it was a great opportunity because at that point I had a vision and a strategy about what I wanted this thing to be. For the first 5, 6, 7 years, I'll be honest with you, I probably need some glasses or a telescope to figure out what I was doing. I never got it because I was just scraping, trying different things. But at that point, I had a little vision of what I wanted to do, and I know I needed more money to do it. I needed a better partner. So I was deciding, do you get the bank, do you get investors, or do you find a great company like an Omnicom? And I had about 3 companies trying to do something with us. And I decided to go with the best company that was going to really invest in me and help me grow my brand. There was a respect there for us to be the best in our little category. There was a potential for us to use our athletes and all the companies they had owned. And I took less money to go with them because I believed that they were a better quality company that would give me a better chance to grow into the better company and to grow the biggest. Most people look at those selling of the companies as a money grab. And if you do that, there's nothing wrong with it. Just as long as you understand that it won't solve all your problems. And so many of my friends did the money grab when they sold their company. And then you got a lot of money, but then what are you doing? Then where are you going? Then what's happening? So that's difficult. Like, that's a difficult choice when somebody walked in to the Pier Hotel with a huge check that would be a game over, and I took a lot less money and bet on myself that I'd be able to build something bigger and make more money over the long run. I got to tell you, that's the balls in Brooklyn in me. And so I tell people out there, don't wish too hard for what you want. You may get it, but understand what's going to happen when you do get it. Think it all the way through. I talked to a lot of people that sold their businesses. I got a lot of good feedback, so I was able to make, I thought, an intelligent decision about what direction I wanted to go because, life can take you through some twists and turns. You don't want to be sitting there on a corner with a lot of money and bored out of your mind.
Of course. Well, I mean, I think it's great that you decided to stay on as CEO and continue overseeing the company because it was your baby, right? It's got to be. It would have been absolutely weird to have somebody else running the whole thing, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah, to have somebody else running the thing, if I would have been just a merger with another company and we merged in, and then I don't think we would have been able to do all the things we've done. I mean, we've definitely created an industry and certainly models for a whole lot of things. I've always been able to think ahead, think big, think different. Has been probably my strength, and I feel like our industry, the sports memorabilia licensing, that business is not all organized in a way where, like others with associations and organizational type of things, to really show who's who and what's what. So I've been kind of doing this more solo. We got a lot of different kinds of people that jump in and out of this industry quickly. It's an easy enter strategy for people. And then they realize how hard it is.
Yeah, exactly.
I have people walk in and go, I'm going to be doing what you're doing, bigger, better. I'm going to put you out of business. To my face. I'm like, great. That's cool.
Bring it on.
Because you need the competition. You need people who want you to do it the right way.
Well, so you sell the Omnicom, and then, of course, the big decision is made to build the new Yankee Stadium. And you said, you know what? I got a few ideas about how to get rid of some of that old Yankee Stadium stuff. And I'm fully immersed in how that all went down. It was a long process, but you had 40,000 plus seats and concrete and bricks and grass and all kinds. I've got stuff over there from you, but that was had to be an incredible undertaking.
It was a big undertaking. It was a big risk also because it came at a time when the economy was bad, but I had to partner with the Yankees. They had told me that when the time came, they would partner up with me on that. We'd started Yankee Steiner in 2004. Yeah. It was a huge break in the industry. Randy Levine and Lon Trost and a bunch of the Yankee executives took a big chance with me to partner up. And, something, they did what they said, and, they basically lived up to everything. So I went to them on the stadium thing. This is why I love the Yankees, frankly, because they talk it and walk it. It's not a mistake that their brand is so strong.
Right.
Because they know what's important. It always stays important. It never deviates, which is their customers. I know putting the best team on the field is critical, and that's extremely important to them. But you'd be surprised the underlying belly of what they'll do for their fans to make sure that brand always stays intact. And this was just another play because they easily could have just taken the stadium down, sold off some of the more expensive pieces, we could have moved on, or they could have gone to the city who owned the stadium and told them they could just keep it. They didn't want to bother with it. But they knew the importance of that stadium to their fans, and they allowed me and supported me in the partnership we created to take that stadium apart piece by piece so that hundreds of thousands of fans would get something. They took it down with. I wanted to take the stadium down with dignity and respect. That was a very meaningful stadium to a lot of people and to the history of the sport, not to mention all the other great events that happened at Yankee Stadium. And they had a major plan for the new stadium. Don't make no mistake. The new Yankee Stadium is incredible. It's insane. And a lot of management teams, I know this because I've taken down a bunch of stadiums, and their attention is so focused on the future that they don't care about the past. Like, just take it down. The Yankees were like, no. We're focused on this new stadium, but Brandon, you take this thing down the right way and make sure our fans are able to get different things. Because I told them it was going to take 4 years to follow this plan through. But I want to do it right and respectfully and not just throw this stuff out there like it was like a garage sale. But I wanted to create a Yankee Stadium product line, which nobody was thinking that way about taking down an old stadium. But I felt that way about it. And, you know, I feel blessed because I'm glad I did it. It wasn't a big money maker, but I knew how important it was to Yankee fans and to baseball. And I didn't want that stuff just go. I don't want it to be just disrespecting, just dumped somewhere or whatever. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of creative stuff that we did with that stadium. And I don't know if there'll be another stadium taken apart like that, although I try, and I do pitch a lot of stadium owners to want to take it down, but most don't want to put the time and energy. They don't. That's where they talk about their brand being so important, but then they'll knock a stadium they've been playing in for 30 years and they'll just blow it up and not care about it. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I still think about the apartment I grew up in, that 539 Kings Highway. But, you know, we all know how important our past is when it comes to a place we've gone to and was a part of our childhood. How many games you go to in the old Yankee Stadium, you think about who played there, Ruth, Gehrig, Mantle, Yogi, DiMaggio, Rizzuto. I mean, you know, you got to be respectful. So,
well, you know what it is that we all shared, you know, I think what people tend to not always remember is the value of an experience. And when you spend, you know, I've been to a lot of the big games at the stadium, the old stadium, new stadium. You know, I was there for the Aaron Boone home run. I mean, you just can't, doesn't matter what you spend.
Yeah, put a price tag on it.
You can't. And, you know, so when you hear about Yankee Stadium coming down, I mean, I was kind of really bummed about that. You know, the memories there were incredible to me, and the new stadium is absolutely gorgeous. Yes. And I've had memories there and so forth, World Series, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, so it was great to see that you were sort of overseeing this, the dismantling, I guess, or the sort of one piece at a time instead of just blowing it up. You know, I guess I would partially understand how some other owners might not be as concerned, because honestly, blowing up sort of Riverfront Stadium, which, you know, maybe had a few memories, but really wasn't a nice stadium, that sort of thing, or some of these other ones, maybe not as big a deal. But Yankee Stadium, I mean, the amount of everything that went on there, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't even know what the year was, 80 something or other. I sat in the very last row of the upper deck behind home plate. I was basically the farthest guy to see Billy Joel play there. I mean, you couldn't be farther.
The boxing. Remember, I mean, I still love my Rolodex, right? I mean, I used to have my Rolodex on my desk, just like I love the old Yankee Stadium. And I still miss it, and I still cry over it not being there. But I also realize, you know, time goes on, and you know, there's new things that have evolved. When I go to the new Yankee Stadium, and I can eat incredible food and all the different things they have there, from you know, being able to get the best souvenirs, best food, and all these different. I mean, I realize like it's a whole nother experience that, you know, time has taken us to. Just like I don't have Rolodex anymore, you know, I put everything in my contacts and my Outlook, and I love to. Sometimes I just miss going to my Rolodex that I used to have on this desk with all my athletes, corporate contacts, friends. Yeah, just sift through, and I you know, instinctively. But you know, listen, old habits die hard, and I love some of the new stadiums out there. Obviously, I'm a little biased, but I've been to all of them. I've been to every stadium with my kid. We've been to every baseball stadium. We traveled, and I got a pretty good sense of who's doing what. And it's amazing how listen, you can put all the bells and whistles into a stadium because money is money, but you walk into some stadiums, you know, when there's a pulse, when there's a heart, the details of the history of that stadium and the focus on it. But a lot of the owners have done a good job. I mean, they put a lot of money into making sure the experience is bigger than even just the game. So I'm grateful for that, because I'm a big sports fan. Spend a lot of time in these stadiums.
Yeah. What are a couple of your favorites?
Well, I mean, I like the D-back stadium, the flexibility of the roof and all the flexibility with their food, and there are a lot of different ways to watch the game there. There's a lot of different things that could be. I like flexibility. I don't, obviously there's some stadiums that have incredible places to sit, but the D-backs is one of my favorites. I like the Pittsburgh Stadium a lot too. You're really close to the field. There's not a lot of space between home plate and behind the plate. The food there is great. Pierogies was one of our favorite things. We hadn't seen that in any other stadium. You got to love Fenway. I mean, and not only Fenway for what it is and what it was, but the ownership group there has done an amazing job of maintaining, keeping that together and updating it enough to make it work. I give them a lot of credit. If you haven't been to Fenway, that's special. The new Yankee Stadium, I'm biased, so is one of the most amazing stadiums I've ever. All the things. If you're into the diversity of sitting with the most amazing food out in the outfield, just hanging out with a bunch of millennials. There's a party going on every night there. If you just want to go have a business dinner in the Audi Club or the Delta Club, I mean, there's a lot of different things, and I like the diversity. I think it's interesting to sit and there's like different worlds going on at Yankee Stadium. I like the Marlins Park where they bring the vendors in. They have like a wing over there in Marlins Park where they bring local vendors. You can actually eat some really, really cool ethnic foods.
Oh, that's great.
We thought that was really hot, my son and I. Kansas City had an incredible, very small Legends behind home plate, full open bar, unlimited, and then obviously steak and a lot of cool stuff. We like that. And then just the view, the Royals Park, when you're looking out there.
The fountains.
Very cool.
Yeah, no,
we had a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of ballparks were great. I mean, all had their strengths, but that was my 3 cents on it.
Well, that's great. I like those 3 cents. Now, this is going to be an easy question and a hard one, but you obviously you're a busy guy. You do a lot of different things, but what gets you up in the morning? What you wake up and what gets you fired up?
Well, the alternative, which is not getting up, and
true, yeah,
and also significance. Yeah. I don't want to. I really still feel like I've got some things I'd like to do that I enjoy doing. I think it's really important as you get older, and this is what I talk about in the book, Living on Purpose. Yeah. Especially if you're somebody who's getting older, you really want to read this book because it's so important that your health and your fitness and your eating and your recovery. Because if you want to keep going, you're going to need those things and you need to make adjustments. It's not nothing I can't do today that I didn't do 20, 30 years ago. I just can't do it for as often or as long. So, right. So it's so important to realize you don't have to check out. But for me, it's like, I don't think for me, I always wanted to be extraordinary and really good at what I did. And I think I built a pretty good business and industry. I don't think you try to be extraordinary at what you do so one day you don't have to do it. I don't think Tom Brady has become the greatest quarterback we've ever seen. We're talking day after a Super Bowl, but so he one day doesn't have to do it. Like you don't put your heart, sweat, soul into something, hoping one day that you can just retire and not do it. You want to do it for as long as you can because you're 24/7. I didn't make a career choice here with Steiner. I made a life choice, and it's something I hope to do to the day I die. Why not? I'm not a big golfer. I'm not a big, let's go sit around the campfire and toast marshmallows guy. I do rest. I mean, a difference like now versus I do rest. I have my days of rest. I'm not as crazy, but also I'm a lot more effective with my experience. I'm a lot more efficient with some of the things I know, so I don't have to overly stress about certain things that maybe I did 20 years ago. But I have my days of rest where I will shut it down, and I want to keep going. I have fun with it. There's a lot of what's great about the sports business is just constantly evolving and changing. The characters, the people in it. Hard sometimes to stay with some of the current players and some of the insanity, but it was like that 30 years ago. People say, "What's it between the players today and yesterday?" I mean, the same level of insanity, frankly. Actually, today's player is a lot more educated, is a smarter player, understands the do's and don'ts better, understands what's at stake, and understands what's required, not only on the field, but what's required when you become a sports celebrity. So, I like that. I like that, they understand that you can't do nothing. Some will do more than others. My job is just analyzing that, trying to find the best players for Steiner collectibles that people are going to want, and then Steiner marketing. So not much different today than yesterday, other than you can get the information about these players and what the story is a lot easier. You can, without me having to stand outside. I used to stand outside a parking lot, Mark, for hours, just trying to learn about the players, see what was going on, see family members, overhear conversations, or I'd be outside the locker room to really understand, to be able to consult with companies to tell them what they were getting. So that information wasn't available anywhere. And if you wanted to call a player, you needed his home phone number.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you agents and this. It was, you really had to work, 3 a.m, a lot of clubs, bars, just being around. So the players saw you, met you, and they give you their home number. So
it's funny. When you mentioned that, from my opinion, now these players are much more concerned and rightly so, much more aware of their brand and brand management. Back 30, 40, 50 years ago, Mickey Mantle, when he was out drinking, he didn't worry as much about who saw him doing what. Maybe the papers caught us, put it in, but it's no big deal. Now everything gets blown through the roof. And so
I think you hit it right on the head. The players are concerned about their brand, but they're not educated about their brand. They don't understand what that means. And I think a lot of people talk about brand building, and the agents talk about brand building, but that relationship is difficult because the agent, if they get into certain brand building, start telling players what they can and can't do, they risk getting fired. So it's hard for players to trust that, because sometimes brand building is a lot of faith, and it is a lot of doing things you can't see, that there isn't a direct return. And players are very short-term thinking. They know their careers are not lasting forever. So when they're talking about brand building, and a lot of times, they're taking their social media for granted. They're not realizing that there's a customer base out there for them and a brand build right there. So they're posting a lot of weird things, not that much different than what Mickey Mantle was doing. Right. And a lot of players don't walk the walk and talk the talk when the brand build. They think because they got a lot of cameras and microphones in front of them and a lot of likes on their Facebook that they're brand building, but they're not. Brand building is recognizing who your customer is and respecting it and doing all the things necessary, which is, servicing those people, giving them value, stuff that they can't get themselves, but you give them, which is real content that's helpful, not just content that where you're monetizing and money grabbing. I think a lot of players have missed, just like back in the day, that it's a new level of missing the opportunities. Although there are a lot of players that are a lot smarter taking advantage of the opportunities, which brings me to one league that I'm so bullish on, not because of where they are, but where they've come from, where they started. And they're very organized, I feel like, which is the NBA player. They're making a lot of money, and they're making good use of that money, and they're making good use of their brand. I'm so proud of that brand, because I remember in the 90s, Barkley kicking the photographer in the balls, Rodman doing his crazy shit, just a lot of weird shit going on. And I love Stern. I feel like he pulled that together. Adam Silver's picked up the baton. But I love today's NBA player. They're trendsetters. They're fashion moguls. They're just doing a lot of the right stuff. And they represent well. They're becoming good role models for a lot of the kids too. You see them more often, just not only doing the right thing, thinking about the right thing, and just doing a lot of successful stuff. It's and there's a lot of players responsible for that. But when I look at that sport as a whole, wow! I mean, it's amazing the progress they've made. And I look at football, and I look at baseball compared to that league. I'm like, wow. What an amazing job that league has done with the leadership and the players really getting along, because you really need the players to buy in, and they're the ones who make it happen, and they are making it happen. Guys like Chris Paul, LeBron, even Magic is still in the, it's just and there's respect. There's a lot of respect for the fans and for each other. I really like the way the NBA has gone, and I think more should be talked about it.
Well, my son is in high school, my youngest son, and he's a huge hoops fan. I'm not as big into hoops. I'm more of a hockey guy and baseball and so forth. But what's interesting about hoops is exactly what you said, Brandon. It's that it's not just what's happening on the court, but it's what's happening off the court. And my son looks at their websites and their sneakers and their clothing and how they speak and how they act and the music they listen to. And it's sort of become more of a lifestyle surrounding the sport, and it makes it more appealing that way. You're absolutely right. It's they're doing it the right way, and I think Adam Silver's, got some interesting ideas for the future that I've been talking about and so forth. And he's really overseeing something that's really making big moves. And I think it's time for MLB to figure out the best, and the NHL too, to really figure out how to step into something like that. I think the NFL is closer to what the NBA is doing, but I agree.
You never see any baseball players and interviews and in-depth talks. The magazine shows is somewhat of a minimal. There's just not enough going on with the players, other than, it's a grind. The season's a grind, so that the players are so burnt out. There should be an adjustment with the schedule. These players are being overworked, frankly. And I think that it's, the amount of years in the minor leagues is not that helpful. And it's not healthy. They don't have enough. They really don't make a whole lot of money in there. There's so much risk. Then they got to come up, play another 4 years. The schedules are brutal. We really don't feel and get to meet and get to know the players as much as we should. And it's a shame, because I mean, those are the adjustments. It's the PA and MLB getting along better and really understanding the nature of what's really going on. Instead, you got more Sunday night games, more 10 games in a row. I mean, imagine having to travel, and so you don't get the best of these guys. I mean, you may get some of the best on the field, but it's tough. It's too much of a grind. And I think part of the whole thing is the sizzle. It's the magazine stuff. And it's giving these guys some time to breathe. That's where I think baseball's headed. The NFL is a train wreck in my mind. I'm shocked that the train is still running. It's a league that I really, really am nervous about. For so much popularity, there's so much chaos in this league. Players in the wrong direction, wrong path. Also, having to sign these rookie contracts creates, you're treating them not properly, I think. Why do these guys, why can't they get some guaranteed money? Look at the money the NFL is making as a league, the owners, the valuations of their teams. Why can't these guys get more money? Why can't they get better health benefits? Why can't they be treated better? And I think that there's too many problems in this league too often on a week-to-week basis. And now the league has become a quarterback, head coach, and usually maybe a wide receiver, running back league. So out of a 45-man roster, people only give a shit about 3 players. And that's terrible.
And it's interesting you mention that, because the majority of the athletes that I'm coaching are ex-NFL, and it is the lineman. It's the safety, the guy that has never gotten really the spotlight. And on top of that, in the NFL, the rosters are so huge that you can do a search for ex-NFL players, and there's thousands and thousands of them out there, and they're all struggling because they didn't, as you said, they didn't make much money at all. And they've been playing football since the day they were born. I mean, they're born, football in their hand, boom, right here, football in their hand. And then they're often, and then that's it.
What's crazy is the NFL player of all the leagues, and I'm not trying to demise the other leagues on smart and intelligence, but I think they're probably the smartest athlete, because you have a big team. You have a lot of players you got to get along with. There is a big, huge playbook. Yeah. You have to go to school, college for 3 years, as opposed to sports, which almost have to go almost none. I mean, so you're in college for 3 years. There's a big organization, a lot of coaches to politically get through. And so I look at the NFL player as probably the most educated and smartest player out of all the team sports, because of the amount of education you have to go through, politics, competition, and everything else. But the league has got to get its act together. There's just too many players getting in trouble. They've got to get with the PA, and they've got to come up with much more training and figuring out ways to get these guys on a better track. And I think you got to treat the players better. I think you've got to figure out how to give these guys more security and treat these guys like better citizens. I don't like the barbarian part of the sport, the injury part of the sport. I know they're trying their best, but it's still very scary to me. I can get over that if you're going to treat these guys with respect and look at them in the long term, in the big picture, because you're right. Many, many players just play 3 or 4 years. There's nowhere near enough money to make a life. And then where are they going? What are they doing?
Well, look, and we're finally hearing much more about the CT and all the long-term injuries that these guys really go through. And I think that, I agree with you. If there was some sort of mechanism in place that made them feel more comfortable about the idea that they're going to be covered, after they leave the game, that there is some protection for them afterwards, and that they're not just going to be sort of thrust out there. It's they do have a fair amount of work to do, and you're right, Brandon. It's not like they're strapped for financial resources. This has got some serious money behind it, the NFL. You know, it's unbelievable, but that's great. So shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk a little bit more about your book. I mean, look, it's been out, just came out, Living on Purpose. And you know what I really appreciate about it is that you intersperse tons of stories throughout. I like how you've got a lot of different sort of characters within it that really reinforce a lot of the lessons that you have. And you're absolutely right. You know, a few of the things that I pulled out of there, one thing I really liked was when you talked about, you know, if you live your life in the past, your life will be history. And I really appreciate that, because I find, especially with the athletes, Brandon, that a lot of them do spend a lot of time. I mean, look, fans love saying, oh, you know, hey, Derek Jeter, I was there when you hit your 3,000 hit. That's amazing. And yeah. But honestly, right now, he's a guy he's focused on the Marlins. He's running a team, and he's got his focus on the future. And yes, he's got a legacy, an incredible legacy, but that's his focus. But a lot of these, a lot of the athletes, and it's not just professional athletes, but it's also, you know, it could be a young lady who won a gold medal in the Olympics, you know, in gymnastics or something, or even someone who didn't medal but just played a sport. They often look back on it because they don't have anything to look forward to. And, you know, that's a lot of, I like what you're saying in your book, because it's not just for people, let's say like me or others in their, you know, a certain age and so forth, but it's also for them to read about what they can do after they leave a game.
Well, you see, there's a lot of conversation about finding your purpose, finding your why. What I try to convey is that you can have many purposes, and you can keep reinventing your purpose. Just because you had a purpose, and maybe you have a purpose for a money grab, or your purpose is just to lose some weight. But I think it's really important to prepare for success. And this is like a big message to a lot of the athletes, which is, hey, if your purpose is playing the NFL or playing the NBA, that's cool. Go for it. 100%, go all in, commitment, everything. Yeah. But also prepare for that success. When you get it, what are you going to then do? What are you going to do with that money once you get it? They don't think much about that. So let's say everything does come true. You're this high school basketball player. You end up making it to the NBA, and then you have all that money. Have you prepared to get all that money, and what you're going to do with it? And what's the repurpose once you get there? And what I try to convey in the book is that the more good you could do, it leads you to doing more well. Most people are just worrying about doing as well as they can. We weren't all put here so we could just do well. We're put here on this earth to help each other and to make this place better. And that has to be part of the deal. And it's the joy, not a burden. It's the joy. That's the sad part. It's like, well, I'll get to that. You know, at some point I'm going to want to do something for my community. At some point I want to, no. That's the joy of it. Why would you postpone the best part of the deal? You've had some success. The best part of the deal is helping others, helping each other, and being a better person. And I think it gets lost because so much hype and success is overrated. You know, it's so much emphasis on the money. If you have a lot of money, you get a lot more. You just seem to get a lot more props than you probably deserve. But, you know, making a lot of money is what you do and what you have. It doesn't necessarily mean who you are. And I think there has to be more concentration about who are you outside of the uniform and on the field or the law firm you work for. Again, who are you and what do you represent outside of all that? Because the money's the money, and I try to explain a little bit of the repurpose, you know, how to reset, kind of deal with some of the past, how to get that out of the way, and some of the lessons I've learned. I think the book is my favorite. You know, I've probably written over 2,000 blogs on brandonsteiner.com, and we have 600,000 people get that blog. But this book is my best work, and I think it's a book that will help a lot of people.
I think it's fabulous. You know, one thing you mentioned there, which I truly appreciate because I try to sort of act the same way, and I think it's something that I wish we could really talk to others about is your idea of 2 acts of kindness every day. And, you know, you mentioned that it could be a simple gesture, it could be a significant one, but trying to do a couple things every day that are, as you said, good. And it doesn't mean that they need to be recognized by somebody else, but just doing it will really lift yourself, right? And it's tell me more about your feeling on that.
I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, but I try to find 2 situations or 2 people that I think can use some help or you know, whatever it is, if somebody had a fire or go to a police station, redo that, or send out some books, or send a check to a charity, whatever you could do. But I try to start up every morning doing 2 acts of kindness. I think the message here is first of all, who would you help? Would you help someone that you knew that couldn't help you back? Because that's the real joy. And I think most people do some good things, but a lot of them is premeditated with the emphasis that you think at some point you'll get something back. And I think that helping people is not a burden. I just want to emphasize that. It's really an opportunity and it's a joy. And when you do a lot of good, it really does, the byproduct of that is you'll even do more well. And I think that when I do 2 acts of kindness, especially to random people they don't know, what have you, it's amazing like how somehow that just circulates. Now I'm 60. I mean, I've been doing this for a lot of years. So there's just a lot of people out there that, I've touched, even in a small way, some bigger than others, but just a lot of goodness out there that I feel like I've touched. And, I feel a lot of joy from that. And I run into a lot of those people here, there, and everywhere. Sometimes it's 10 years after the fact, or it's 2 years after the fact. But, people remember. You remember people that did something nice for you, and you want to surround yourself with those kind of people. So why wouldn't you do it?
You know what?
Why wouldn't you?
That's something that, to me, you're exactly right. I just a quick story. I was at a conference out in Vegas. It was just about 40 people there. That was it. And this is back in April, May, with Marcus Ogden, a former football player. He's out there a lot, doing a lot of speaking. And
I follow Marcus.
Yeah, he's great, fabulous guy. And he, at this event, he had some former athletes, some other business owners, and so on. And there was a guy next to me sitting there, and he's looking over at me, and he's like nodding his head, hey. And I'm like, I look at him sort of like he's familiar. And several years ago, I was doing some work with the Wounded Warriors. And to make a long story short, this guy walks over, he says, "Hey, it's Jose, right? Remember me?" And I was like, oh my God. Jose Rojas was the very first Wounded Warrior that I helped out. And he said to me, "Mark, you're not going to believe this, but the advice you gave me on how to market myself and how to get onto LinkedIn and how to do this, I ended up doing well in my interviews, and now I'm working for PNC Bank in Atlanta, and I've got a great career going. And I got to tell you, I really appreciate all that. It really helped me." And I was did one of those, that caught me a little bit off guard, and which was more bizarre was the fact that he was sitting right next to me, and this was the very first guy I helped out with through the Wounded Warriors. So that was worth way more than someone giving me a nice check for whatever it is, right? And that's something I'll never forget among some others. So
it's a great story, and that's what it's about. It's just it's fun, and the money grab's good. I'm glad I got off that train, bought that car, and I've had money grabs before, and I'm gonna have money grabs ahead of me, which I think money grabbing is good. I mean, we can't sit around here all day doing all good and blah blah blah. But if you're really, you don't want to get bankrupt or be backlogged with you're doing good. You don't want to let me get healthy next week. After this month, I'll get healthier. I think you can't do enough good for yourself. That's really important. First is do good for yourself. Take care of yourself. Do the things you need to do. And you'll be surprised when you're feeling better and you're doing more good, how many more new ideas and repurposes will come up to enable you to get to the next chapter of your book.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, the feedback on this book's been amazing. We actually had it sold out. The other books, I've never had this kind of result. This book's been sold out. We just got it back in stock a week ago.
Oh, that's great.
I'm really proud that they're it's kind of taking a little bit of a life onto itself.
Well, that's good, and you should be proud of that, because I know you're saying you're 60 and so forth, but you've got so many experiences. You've been through so much, and a lot of challenges, but also a lot of successes, and really it's all manifested into a lot of the stories that are in this book. And I think it's a great read for anybody that's an entrepreneur or a business person, or just someone that's trying to, as you said, live life with purpose. So congrats on the book. And what's the best way to get it?
I mean, you can go to BrandonSteiner.com if you want it autographed. I know there's a lot of collectors out there. And, if you want just on Amazon, if you want to get the Kindle, that's cool. Whatever. BrandonSteiner.com, Amazon. I'm appreciative. I go to Brandon Steiner. If you go there, register to the blog. There's some really good little nugget gifts every day I give you. And thank you. If you take that road, I appreciate you reading it. Love hearing the feedback of what the big takeaways were.
Well, the feedback's always great. So we're going to jump into a quick little segment called Hit Your Mark. I like to ask a couple quick questions. Number one, super fast. Do you own a boat?
No,
All right. For some reason, I didn't think you would. I don't know why.
because it's a pain in the ass to take care of them, and I don't really love being on the water because I get seasick.
I sort of had that feeling. With that said, if you had one, what would you call it?
I call it faith.
Wow, good one.
Such an important element that it's so underestimated right now in this country, and we all need to raise our level and the volume up on our faith.
Excellent. Second question, and I have a sneaking suspicion I know what your answer is going to be. What is your favorite bagel?
Of course, it's the everything. Yeah.
Why is that, Brandon?
I'm a big, I invented the everything bagel, which you have to read the end of the book to find out about that. But I do love a salted bagel. I don't eat bagels anymore because they're just too unhealthy and they're too many calories and they're very difficult carb to digest. But when I do, there's nothing like a warm salted bagel with some cream cheese. It's more my favorite even than the everything. But the everything bagel is my claim to fame, so I'm sticking with it.
Well, almost your claim to fame. So, all right, you've met hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of athletes, celebrities, etc. But who are 3 people, and it can be alive or dead, that you would love to have dinner with? 3 people that maybe you haven't met before that you say, and it could be people that have been long past. But who would you sit with?
Certainly, I would love to have kind of hooked up with George Washington or Abe Lincoln. I mean, that would be amazing. I'd love to have met Jackie Robinson to see what he was about and what was going on there. And I'd like to hang with Oprah Winfrey. I'm a big Oprah fan. I've met a lot of famous people. I'm very grateful. I'm not one of those people that have to meet every famous people. I like all the types of people, really, whether they're famous or not. I learned something from everybody. But Oprah is somebody that I probably should get arrested for the amount of stuff I've stolen from her. I've watched her for 30 years now. Yeah. She's an unbelievable marketeer. Yeah. She's an incredible businesswoman. Her level of giving back and her level of helping people is off the charts. And I've gotten a lot of my best ideas on how to be benevolent and how to help people from her. And she's ahead of the curve on even her new station, which I tell people, if you don't watch anything, watch Super Soul Sunday on every Sunday or a master class. And I'm a big Oprah fan.
Oh, that's great. Well, you know what? I want to congratulate you because you're the first podcast guest I've had that actually mentioned, and I mention him all the time, George Washington and Abe Lincoln. Because to me, that, and no disrespect to Oprah and so on, but to me, how fascinating it would have been to sit down with this guy, especially back in those days. You hear about how, what they had to go through and
challenges, the adversity and how they dealt with it and knew how to sell it. It wasn't like everything was laid out. They had to do a lot of selling. They were great salesmen. I mean, to sell this with this plan of what we have for this country was a big.
Well, and constantly trying to keeping the patriots, the residents to stay the course because there's so much adversity to just keep on battling the British. And it was great story back then. So no, I appreciate you saying that though. I'm glad because a lot of people sort of throw out 3 current celebrities or whatever it might be. And so Jackie Robinson, that would have been, that also be a great guest to sit down with. Good job. All right. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time today, Brandon.
Appreciate your job, Mark.
Yeah.
Keep in touch, man. And thanks for having me and appreciate the comments on the book and thanks for following me and thanks for all your business. I appreciate all that. Keep buying that stuff. It's healthy.
Of course it is. Well, listen, have a great rest of the day, and we will certainly talk soon, Brandon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, cheers. Thanks so much for joining us today on this episode of Make Your Mark podcast. The goal of the podcast is to help you find ways to make your mark, to succeed in life, and to jump past your competition. Be sure to leave me a review on iTunes and Stitcher, and subscribe to be the first to hear new episodes. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email, mark@markmoyer.com, and I'll get back to you right away. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.